Hello, folks. Today we have here with us Jasmeet, joining us from HashiCorp. Jasmeet, very excited to have you here and learn more about how HashiCorp thinks about developer productivity and developer experience. So, why don't you start with a quick introduction of yourself?
Thanks, Ankit. So this is a pleasure to be here and talking to you as well as your audiences here. So yeah, my name is Jasmeet. I live in a small town in Kitchener, Ontario, which is in Canada, west of Toronto. I work for HashiCorp, so it's a remote role, pretty fun place to be. In this role, I have different experiences playing with different technologies. I've been in the developer productivity role for almost 9 years now.
Amazing. So, that's a lot of time working in that productivity space. So, uh, working in all these different organizations, what have you seen? Are there like common patterns? Are there like kind of like core differences in like dev productivity across all of these different companies? Give us like
Yeah,
an
very, very
30,000 foot view.
definitely. So somebody who does not know about developer productivity, I always tell them what it is by explaining you are developing tools, systems, frameworks, protocols for other developers in the company. Very high level explanation. But then it gets interesting because different companies, and definitely I've been part of some of them, as I've mentioned, at all these different places I've worked so far and other interactions I've had with other developer in these roles, I figured out different companies define these roles differently. So not there's not a single definition of a developer productivity engineer in general. Like it's not like you are an Android engineer, so you know you work on Android, or you're an iOS engineer, so you work on iOS. Developer productivity could mean different for different people and at different companies at the same time. So you could be doing CI/CD, you could be doing DevOps work most of the time, you could be doing observability, you could be doing maybe just tooling, like internal tooling, developing those kind of internal tools for different developers, or you could be just managing, let's say, all the infrastructure pieces. Like you could be doing Terraform for a company, which is what most of the time I do as well for some of the tools that we manage. So it could be different for different companies, and also depends on like what kind of tools and products you're working with. So it's very generic, but it's also at the same time giving you a lot of horizontal view of all the tools that are available in the industry, and then it gives you a lot of scope to expand and learn more and more things. So that's how I talk about developer productivity.
Amazing. So obviously coming to HashiCorp now, right? That's a very interesting company in itself. Many folks who are working in DX space actually use Terraform on a regular basis, right? So tell us a bit more about like how is it inside of HashiCorp, how it is kind of like, being a platform team for a company that itself is a platform. What does it mean internally for you? How is sort of like, dev productivity internally defined?
So yeah, that's a good question because a lot of people will think like if you are developing Terraform or Vault or Boundary, these kind of products, how do you even use that, or how do you even develop on top of that? Like, so short answer is we do a lot of dog fooding, which means we use our own products to develop these products again. So it's basically it cycles back into the product itself. So we definitely use Terraform. 99% of the things are Terraform. We use Vault, we use Boundary, Console, anything and everything that HashiCorp produces, we use in-house for our own software development as well. And good thing is, because we are so close to the developers, working with hand in hand with them, working on the features with them. So we are part of their release cycles, we are part of their CI/CD, we are also part of their observability stack that we have. So we get to choose and work with each of these technologies at the same time, developing the features along with the developers. So it's like you develop a new feature, you get to play with it firsthand. You get to play it before actual users get to use it. So we are kind of early adopters to be saying that within the company itself. So it gets a lot of feedback from our own use cases. So we get to see all these new features. We also are able to test them and provide it back to our developers so that they can release it and our users can use them in future.
Nice. So, share a bit about like how the team is structured. Like, I understand when you're in the dev productivity team, your core users are still internal users of, or like internal developers of HashiCorp. Or do you think sometimes you also work with the external developers?
Now, within our developer productivity org, our consumers are basically all other developers within HashiCorp. So they have to be employees of HashiCorp to be using the tools, the frameworks, the systems that we build in our team. Not just developers, we work with designers, we work with TPM, we work with product managers, we work with SREs, anything and everything to do with getting the builds and products out from for the user. So anything that has to do with software development, we work with those kind of teams.
Okay, so share a bit more about like how big is this dev platform or dev productivity organization, and like more specifically, what does your team do in that?
Right. So we have roughly around 550-ish engineers, you can say, hands-on
Okay.
engineers, I would say, excluding all the managers. We have like 150 managers as well. And I'm talking only about engineering org. Within the 550 engineering capacity that we have, there are like two major sections you can imagine. One is the self-managed side of things, which is like what Terraform, Vault, other products that you can basically go and download and start using. And then there is the enterprise version, or basically the cloud versions, which is basically the HCP platform, the HashiCorp Cloud Platform. I am under the HCP Cloud Platform, which is basically the cloud offering of these self-managed tools. So you get once you subscribe to the HCP platform, you get Terraform, Vault, all these products on that platform. So you don't have to install and run on your own infrastructure. Under this particular section, we have a developer productivity org of, I would say, approximately 100 folks, which is basically too big. But there's a stark difference between other companies and what HashiCorp has like made up the developer productivity org. So it's not just developer productivity engineers. It's also a good portion is a release engineering org as well, which basically is like responsible for anything and everything to do with the actual releases happening. There's an entire SRE org. There's also organization around platform. So there's a full grown list of engineers under the platform organization. So developer productivity is an umbrella term. We don't really use developer productivity at HashiCorp. We call it internal platform. So everything is an internal platform, and under this internal platform, we have teams like release engineering, my team, which is developer workflows and tooling. So I belong to that particular group of individuals. There is SRE group. There is core infrastructure group, which is responsible for like actual servers and maintenance of those servers within the company. Under this big organization, my group is called developer workflows. You can imagine this to be any other company's developer productivity team.
Nice. So, talking about your team, which is developer workflows, maybe start with explaining what are your core goals? Like, what are the KPIs? What are sort of like metrics or things that you're trying to make the impact on?
Definitely. Before getting to the KPIs, I'll briefly mention the key goals that we have in our mind, or what we want to do for our consumers within the company or other developers in the company. So we have like high-level goals in the areas, you can literally count them on fingers. So number one is like developer onboarding or service onboarding. So any new developer joins the company or joins the team, they will need accesses to different tools. They will need actual tools itself, like what we develop. So anything and everything around that, new GitHub repositories, stuff like that, accesses to that. There's like Terraform policies, Vault policies, anything and everything to set up for the day one operation for a new service and a new developer. That's under my team. So that's one of the important roles that we play for developer and service onboarding. The second big thing is the developer environment. So anything and everything to do with a developer writing or developing on their machine, we have taken it to the cloud. So every single developer now gets to have their development environment set up on the cloud. So me and my team are responsible for that part of the infrastructure and configuring, making sure that the developers get access to their right machines, how they're maintaining it, how they make sure that they're connecting to the right machines. All that is controlled via certain tooling that we have developed in-house, and my team is responsible for maintaining that part of the experience as well for a developer to onboard. And then second thing will be they will be needing that developer experience on the environment, the developer environment. So we provide that environment. We have a onboarding process that developers follow. Most of it is automated. I'll go in a little more details once we further get into those. The another area is we have developer portal, which is basically kind of a catalog. You can imagine we again use Backstage, so it's pretty common and a pretty standard developer portal that companies use. We are pretty big on Backstage. The kind of investment we have made is right now entire HashiCorp documentation is on Backstage. So we are the team which maintains Backstage, not just the documentation side of things. That's under the teams. They keep their own documentation in their own repositories, but the infrastructure that is needed to run the whole Backstage instance, maintaining it and adding new features, onboarding new people or new services to that Backstage instance, that part of the experience is also owned by my team. And lastly is another different area, but another area which is of super importance because it's all about tooling. So any internal tooling, any internal developer required tools that are needed are built by my team. So we build tools which help them again to do all of these things around interacting with their developer environments, interacting with higher environments. So any kind of deployment tools, releasing tools, those are all built by my team.
Wow, that's a huge area. So you said your team. What is the size of your team?
So we have 8 engineers as of now, including me.
Wow. Okay. So then how do you even prioritize? Like I feel like kind of given dev environments, you talked about Backstage, you talked about onboarding, you talked about documentation, and internal tooling, automation, all of those things. So yeah, I mean it feels like more products than the number of engineers in your team. So tell us a bit more about how you think about prioritization, kind of like, how do you kind of like if there are so many different requests coming from different teams or like you have your own roadmap, um, what are like again going back to some KPIs, but like also with prioritization in general, how does your team think about it?
So our team, as I said, there are 8 engineers, and all 8 of them are like senior engineers. So we are kind of leading our own projects in some right or capacity. And you can imagine we in conjunction with other members of the team. So we work in tandem with a couple of engineers, or 2 or 3 engineers working on an area of the project, and then we rotate every single quarter. So how our KPIs meet into, or how do we prioritize these KPIs basically? So our goals are very much a reflection of the entire org's goal, which I mentioned, the platform team that we have, the entire 150 people that we have at the platform level. So we, once in a quarter, we get together on the organization level, not just 8 people, but the entire platform team. We get together and talk about high level goals of the company. They trickle down back into our org's goal, like what we're trying to achieve in that particular quarter. And then those trickle down back into my particular team. And we have these conversations once in every quarter, but before that we prepare ourselves with our own team's highest priority tickets or highest priority tasks that we can bring forward to that particular common meeting with the platform, and then we pitch what we want to work on, and then how it gets worked on by different management level people. So they decide these are some of the tasks that we should be going forward, and they align well with the company level objectives. This is how our KPIs and some of the targets are actually organized. At the same time, we have a very interesting concept of on call, which is not technically on call as in other companies. They are on call, but they are also an on point person. We call them on point because number one, they take in any incoming request. So that shields all other engineers, all other 7 people in the team from responding to random requests, random questions. There's only one person who loses their focus around that time. So it's not like 7 people have to lose focus or have to respond to a generic query coming into the team channel or something. So it's only one person. We have dedicated role. This rotates every week. So that person is responsible because we know that person is on point or on call. They don't get as many sprint tasks as other engineers in the team, so that they can focus on these ad hoc requests, ad hoc feature requests or complaints or issues, or even anything which can go bad. Like if a new deployment went in and something went bad, they can work with other team members of other teams or find out people who will be responsible for helping them out to fix the issue, rather than 7 people losing their sleep in the middle of night or like figuring out what's happening and making it more chaotic. So we don't have that kind of environment as such. Also, the on-point person, because more and more automation is being put into our systems and our tools, we are seeing a lot of stability in our systems and tools. That results in the on-point person who did not get a regular sprint task, they can spend time fixing those maintenance issues. We call it fix the broken windows, basically. So we don't leave any broken windows if we find them. So
Right.
if I'm the on-point person, and if I hear something, if I see something in the code, if I see a discussion happening in somewhere in the Slack, I see that if that particular area is my area of expertise or my domain, I will jump into it and I'll fix it in that particular sprint itself because I'm on point. I have to fix it.
Wow, sounds like you folks have a pretty mature ecosystem. And speaking of that, I'd love to dive into dev environments. Seems like that's something that you folks have spent heavily, a lot of efforts into. So maybe just start with like history of dev environment. Like, I mean, there are already some tools out there, including GitHub Code Spaces, that helps you run a dev environment itself. So share a bit about HashiCorp's philosophy around dev environments, kind of like how it started. Did you folks ever think about using off the shelf versus sort of like building yourself?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So HashiCorp, the product we support, it's the entire HCP platform. So if you go
Hmm.
to HashiCorp portal, whatever you get there after you pay for the service and you get in, whatever you see there, it's a combination of at least I can say easily 20 to 25 services running behind the scenes.
Wow.
So you can imagine almost 17 to 18 teams running or managing those services under HCP platform. And the major reason why we don't run off-the-shelf solutions for developer environment is because the platform itself is too complicated. We have multiple services and they do different things, and it's not straightforward that how somebody can run these services on an off-the-shelf solution because the solution we have created is very much customized to this particular need. So I can give a high-level overview where we have a control plane requirement and a data plane requirement. So data plane is where basically if a user of the platform creates any new data, you create new virtual machines or you create new Terraform plans or things like that, all that data gets processed and stored in the data plane environment, which has its own database. It runs its own computation. At the same time, there's what you call control plane layer, which is basically a common layer for all the things. For example, billing, or there is common passwords or storage for secrets, stuff like that. And there is common things like network trafficking. These are like basically common things that affect everything and anything under that particular account, right? So the way it works is we needed some kind of environment which can run at a click of a button, but at the same time gives this whole HCP experience to the developer. So once they click a button, or the issue, basically clicking a button is equivalent to running a command that we have a CLI tools for everything. So developers don't have to leave their terminal for anything. So running this particular command brings up your environment, and you can connect it to that environment just like you will be running a regular HashiCorp portal on your browser. So once you connect to that environment, you can run your environment hosted machine on your browser. So in the browser, you can actually see your portal running with all the services running. And then you get more custom control of these services using that CLI tool that I was mentioning. So, and that's mentioned to be that's actually be maintained by me and my team. And that's also one of the core tools that our team maintains. Uh, that's responsible for anything and everything to do with interaction with the remote environment or the cloud developer environment that we have. It's also responsible for us managing those for them, for our customers. So it's a dual layer kind of a tool. One, if it's used by the user, they will be able to use only their machine. But if I or my team members use it, we can basically help them out. We can go into their machines, we can troubleshoot with them, and do kind of administrative tasks using the same tool that we have developed. Everything is in Go, and we are pretty proud of this because number one, it's one single solution for all the developers, and it's so customized that people get to choose what kind of database they want. Do they want Postgres? They want MySQL? They don't want any database. All of those are possible. Um, they can run lambdas on their environment. You can run like mock emails. You can also run mock billing. All those services are built into this developer environment. So it's basically a complete copy of the HCP platform, but only for that dedicated developer, and only they can log in and make changes to it, except for the maintenance team, which is me and my team. So it's kind of one single solution, but it's also very complicated. At the same time, it has been made super stable as of now. So we have made like almost 3.5 years of effort on this to make it so stable that now it's on a fully automated mode, except for when you have to make changes or introduce new features.
If I understand it correctly, so there's like multiple services which are like all running on this each individual environment, right? So as a developer who are working in, like, let's say one service at a time, they can use the dev version of their service and then they can use the live version for everything else. That's kind of like, I'm guessing,
That
how most developers interact.
Exactly. So that is the interesting piece, how developers use it. Not all the developers want the latest and the greatest version of everything all the time. So what they do is they spin up their dev environment with the latest service of everything, except for the service they are working on. So a Terraform developer or a Vault developer will only be interested in their branch, their local branch code to be running as part of the entire ecosystem. So we have mechanism to push just their code, which will replace the production version of that service on the developer environment, and everything else will just club in, integrate with that particular local branch code, and works as if it was production environment. So very closely associated with our monitoring services. We have observability set up, so you can easily trace your logs, you can monitor your activities, you can also figure out your container level logs as well, like all the way to the containers.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, sounds like it's pretty mature environment. How long have you folks been working on this? Like, kind of like give us a bit more history of this.
Yeah, so when I joined HashiCorp in 2022, April 2022, this was picking up pace, but it was not yet there. There was a previous solution which was kind of 80 to 90% in use, and this newer solution, which I'm mentioning so far, was almost like 10 to 15% in use. That older solution was a little bit heavy on resources. So the older solution was not to run it on the cloud, but run it on a developer's machine. So basically, all it does was using a CLI tool, we were spinning up containers, Docker containers, on the developer's machine, which was basically like 17 or 18 containers running on your machine, and it just completely blows up your laptop, right? So you cannot run that in long run. You cannot leave it running for hours. And also there was less and less control over the services because it was all local. We were not able to debug other people's issues, and we were not able to trace and monitor their logs and stuff like that. It was kind of challenging. So a better solution was this cloud solution, which was less in use, but it was also in a very initial stages. So when I joined, there were like literally efforts to migrate everybody from the old solution to the new solution. But at the same time, almost 50 to 60% of my team was also focused on adding new features to this. So, but yeah, as you asked me, 3.5 years of effort has gone into just building this where it is right now.
That's amazing. So, the other question I have is like, how does the company think about cost? Because like these dev environments, I'm guessing as a developer, they can possibly spin up more than one at a time.
Yeah,
How does it work?
that's a very interesting question. Let me actually take a step back and tell you about how the developers even get access to this. And that will feed into your question about like, can they spin up more than one? So we have automated that process as well. So developers don't have to talk to us if they need a machine. But we have made it in a way that a developer can ask for only one machine. We have tied it to their AWS accounts, and every single individual developer gets an AWS account when they join the company. So they have their dedicated AWS account. Now, when you are tied to that particular account, that account is monitored and in a way created that it ties to your developer box, this developer environment. So only one developer box can exist on a particular account. So if you request it second time, our automation catches it and tells you, or basically publishes this information that this already exists. Do you really want to rewrite and recreate it? So we have a mechanism to recreate any developer box at any point of time. Some of the information that we asked these developers at the time of onboarding. So if genuinely a new user has joined or a new developer has joined and they want a new developer box, what they will do is they will tell us their team name, their email, and that account ID that I was mentioning. So they can share that with us. We have automated this process, so all they have to do is open a GitHub issue, regular GitHub issue, and the GitHub issue itself is templated in a way that they get these fields to fill in. So they have to only fill these fields. Once they submit the issue, the on-call person gets a ping on Slack, and all they have to do is just say approved. And if there is some information which is missing, or if the person has already gotten that box before and they're re-requesting it, that automation catches it and also publishes that before it goes to the on-call person asking them to approve. So that publishing of information goes back to the original person asking, the requester, as well as the on-call person. So anybody can see that what has happened to that particular request at any point of time. We use GitHub Actions for all these automation. And behind the scenes, GitHub Action also calls Terraform. So everything is Terraform based. Terraform takes care of commissioning these boxes on the cloud, setting up all the policies, accesses, IAM roles, whatever you can imagine, basically, RDS instances, anything and everything needed for running a particular cloud portal. You also mentioned about cost. Let's go over that as well, because these are EC2 instances. You can imagine how much cost is involved, and there's like VPCs running, and there's like S3 storage involved and whatnot. Basically, we are fully utilizing the entire AWS package that we get to run these kind of ecosystem. So cost-wise, it is cost heavy for sure. We have mechanisms to control that. So we do have automation, which tells us if a particular individual has left the company or they have stopped using this tool for whatever reason. Let's say they transition into management roles. So managers don't need this kind of environment. When that happens, we have automation behind the scenes, which basically runs the deactivation scripts that we have. That way we get away with deleting these unused or less used VMs that we have. That way we are controlling the cost. And then secondly, we have a mechanism that we can delete AWS resources on demand as well. So it's as new as it's in the beginning.
Very cool. So switching gears a little bit, this sounds pretty. I mean, obviously, you folks have spent a lot of time building this. If let's say another company or somebody wants to build a system like this, what would you recommend? And like also kind of like related, do you ever think like HashiCorp will open source this technology?
I honestly don't think that's going to happen. There have been discussions. There have been discussions not just with this particular tooling that we have for developer environments, but other tooling, that magic tool that I mentioned about, that is created in a way that it can basically do a lot of things. And it's so functional that even other teams can develop on top of that particular tool. So if they need something, they can develop on this tool in that same code base for their own use case. And that will not impact anybody else. It's a plug-in kind of infrastructure. So you write your own code in your own repository, but it will interact with this tool to make things happen.
Nice.
So
Okay.
there have been talks around open sourcing some pieces of it, but honestly, it's so customized that it may not be a suitable use case for a lot of outside use cases. It's very specific to what we do within the company. However, we have done open sourcing of some of the tools. For example, our company HashiCorp is pretty big on documentation, RFCs, looking for request for comments kind of thing. So we do a lot of documentation, a lot of discussions around architecture. All that is documented. So we did open source a tool called Hermes. If you look up Hermes HashiCorp, you'll get to know about that. That's open source. So any company can use that for maintaining and managing RFC documentation within the company. So that's open source right
Nice.
now.
Nice. I'll also like maybe you can share some of these links later. We can put that in the show notes for people to easily access.
Definitely.
Okay, I know we are at time, so and we can go on forever. So we're gonna stop here, and maybe we can have some maybe a couple of minutes for rapid fire questions, and we can wrap it up with that. So are you
Definitely.
ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. So tell us, what are you most excited about in the developer experience, developer productivity space in the coming years?
I would say I've seen a tremendous growth in this area. A lot companies are now recognizing the need of having developer productivity, developer experience kind of engineers in their groups, which was not the case 5 years back. Like 5 years back, it was more or less part of infra, part of DevOps, part of test org, infrastructure. It wasn't clear what the companies needed from this particular domain. Like, what will the developer experience look like? But now it's more and more clear. Companies are investing into developer experience, developer productivity domain, and there are specific roles for specific tooling, specific requirements, which is kind of exciting because now it's getting its own space within the engineering orgs.
Nice. And kind of maybe related, what's your take on sort of like these new coding assistants, AI-based coding assistants, and also collectively, like, have you seen interesting use cases of AI, LLM in dev productivity?
I personally, I feel AI is super cool, but at the same time, it's also useful for getting ahead of the curve, like how you can learn newer and newer things, uh, not waiting for the right time, but you can create that right time right away. It's super useful. I use it personally. I'm using like Amazon Q as well as Copilot both in my day-to-day work as well as my personal projects. But it's super interesting how this will shape up our future engineering practices. I see a lot of positive things in it. And the major use case I see is reduction of human toil in
Hmm.
engineering practices. Things like one of the use cases and one of the engineering areas I will be very much focused in future will be how knowledge sharing can be reduced effort for engineers, but more effort for AI. So how we can use AI in the area of knowledge sharing, like how our documentation can be more smarter, how our Q&As that happen over Slack, how they can get more smarter. Like how can we
Nice.
introduce LLMs to answer queries which an engineer has to sit and answer every few days? How can our knowledge discovery can be made more smarter? Like you and I, we both are engineers. We go to Slack and ask different engineers how this is to be done or where can I find this. Can there be intelligence built into these kind of interactions so that engineers don't have to waste time on these kind of interactions, but they can focus on more bigger projective projects which they can deliver rather than like answering day-to-day queries.
Do you have any favorite tools for DX that you recommend or love?
uh I would say that's a very hard question because I don't know how many tools I actually use on a day-to-day basis, but I would say the
Can you
tool
pick
we have
one?
created I would say the tool we have created in-house for our developer experience. That's my favorite so far. Like it's so magically, beautifully written that anybody will fall in love with it within like few minutes of exploring the code base.
Nice.
Not from a user's perspective. I'm talking about the code base perspective. And when I joined the company, this code was not where it is right now. It's been an effort of like continuous 3 years or 2.5 years now that
Yes.
this is looking beautiful, and the entire company is adopting it. So it's a big use case of this tool.
Maybe folks should write a blog post about it. I'd love to read more about the use cases of this.
Definitely, I'll bring it back to my team and we'll see how we can share this.
Nice. And is there any book that you recommend?
On DX or in general?
I mean, preferably DX, but could also
I
be
would say,
general.
yeah, I would say Pragmatic Engineer is what I loved reading last time.
The blog post or the
That's an
book?
interest. The book I'm talking about, yeah. I
Okay.
think I have it here. Yeah, I have it here as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
this
mean, I
is the
think
one
it
I'm
like,
talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. Okay. That's very
Yeah,
cool.
that's interesting how it can like bring out some of the new ideas and same old stuff, but with newer ideas, how you can improve and like keep on implementing those ideas.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, Jasmeet, thank you so much. This was a pleasure talking to you. I know we went way far over time, so there was a lot of interesting nuggets here. Really appreciate you spending time. And yeah, see you around. And thank you, folks, for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ankit. Enjoyed my talk. Thank you.
Bye.